Hello and welcome once again to the video. In this one I will be taking a look at the Grand Prix Data Book, Formula One Racing Facts and Figures 1950 to date, although that's quite a bit out of date. Written, compiled by David Hayhoe, with Nigel Mansell's Ferrari 640 from 1989 on the front cover. I can tell also looking at this that is the 640 that took part in the first few races of the season, before there was a big air intake. They completely changed the top of the Ferrari partway through the season, and the 640 for most of the season had a big air intake on the top for its normally aspirated engine instead of these little side slits down here. But yeah, this is the 640 that took part in the first few races of the 1989 season. This book was written in 1989, so when it says to date, it means up to the end of 1988. So that was a very cutting edge photo. Nigel Mansell just joined Ferrari, hadn't raced for Ferrari yet, and so this was an upcoming photo from the new season. He could even be driving the 639 there, because the 639 was a prototype Ferrari, never actually raced, but it was a car that was developed through part of 1988 in order to be raced in 1989, but it wasn't in the end, or it morphed into the 640, which was very close to the 639. Anyway, I digress slightly. So this book, I bought this book at the British Grand Prix at Silverstone in 1989, and there is a price on the back. The price on the back is £12.95, which is quite expensive for 1989. But I had to have it because I used to collate statistics back then, in the days before the internet. I used to rely on books and magazines to collect statistics for Formula One. I stopped doing that about 20 years ago, because there was no need to, with the internet having all the figures there all the time. The world of international Grand Prix motor racing has always been one of glamour, excitement, and the expenditure of wealth. But it is also a world of unremitting attention to detail, speed measured in thousandths of a second, and success measured in the minutiae of championship results. Okay, so let's dive in, have a little look. So basically, there's not really much writing. There's a little bit of an introduction, but it is basically, make sure it's in focus. It's basically there's a little bit of chit chat there, and then you've got they list all the details about the 89 drivers, the 89 teams, the 89 circuits, and then race details. What were they? Oh yeah, of course, race details. Each individual race going back to 1950, and I used to use that a lot for reference when I was doing statistics, because I didn't rely on one book. I had about 3 or 4 books, and I would compare the statistics in order to make my own statistics. Like if I wanted to know how many German drivers had scored points in Formula One, that wouldn't necessarily be in any book, but I would use those books in order to correlate those figures. Sometimes a bit of a headache when there would be a discrepancy between books, and which one do you go for? That's why I had 3 or 4 books. Best to have an odd number of books, really. If you have 4 books, it could be a 2-2 draw between the books. I think I used to use 3. Of those 3, I think I have 2 left. But I definitely have this one. And then at the back, it gives you the list of most Grand Prix winners, most pole positions, most fastest laps, all that sort of thing. So he just does a lot of chit chat here, which we can skip past. Talking about the regulations. And here we go into the drivers. Oh, first of all, world champions, you see. Let's make sure it's in focus. Make sure it's always in focus. So, yep, going back to 1950. Now, it was probably from this book, or maybe earlier, that I memorised all the world champions. Doesn't take a lot to memorise that if you're motivated. It's not a lot to remember, but I might have done it from this book, or I might have memorised all of that beforehand. I never memorised who won all the Constructors' Championships, though, I have to say. I was never quite as motivated for that, so that's not something that I've fully memorised. But yeah, see, the reigning champion was Ayrton Senna and his McLaren Honda Turbo. He scored 90 points, plus 4, because back then it was the best 11 results rule, which they scrapped for the 91 season onwards. The idea was that they... what was the idea? It was rewarding drivers who were winning races more so. So the best 11 results rule, it was a bit complicated. It would take your best 6 results from the first 8 races, and then your best 5 results from the second lot of 8 races. It's very complicated. And I think only once did it, so this plus is the total points scored. And I think only once did it actually change the championship, and I think that was in 1989, the year that this book was written. No, sorry, it was 88. It was 88, sorry. It was 88, yeah, because Prost won more points, or scored more points than Senna. But Senna won the championship. Basically because of countback of wins. But we'll see that. I'll show you the 88 rundown, the actual championship description in a minute. So, Michele Alboreto, Philippe Alliot. Michele Alboreto, he was good. Oh, he won 5 races. It always felt like he won a lot more than 5 races. I remember that win, Las Vegas and the Tyrrell. It was a green Tyrrell, the Las Vegas Grand Prix in 1982. And he was runner-up in the 85 championship to Prost. Good driver, Italian. Oh, look, there's Martin Brundle, look. Martin Brundle, born in King's Lynn. At this point, he just had a 4th, a 5th, and a 6th. He had actually finished 2nd place, I think, in a couple of races in 1984 in a Tyrrell, but the results were taken off him due to an irregularity with the team. It's most unfortunate. But obviously, he got better results after 1989. Chop. You can recognise a lot of these drivers. Maybe I should say all the names of all the drivers actually from 89. So we've got Alboreto, Alliot, Arnoux, Berger, Gerhard Berger, Thierry Boutsen, Martin Brundle, Alex Caffey, Ivan Capelli, Andrea de Cesaris, who was given the nickname De Crasheris because he was prone to accidents sometimes, but also very, very quick. He had one pole position in his career, but in a car, in the Alfa Romeo. That's right, Alfa Romeo, look. US Grand Prix 82. He could be quick on his day. I liken him to a bit like Pastor Maldonado. Could be lightning quick in one race, but then not very good or accident prone in another 9 races. You know? Yannick Dalmas, Christian Danner, Gregor Wojtek, Bertrand Gaccio. Oh, Bertrand Gaccio, he's the guy who gave Michael Schumacher his debut. Gaccio was due to race in the Belgian Grand Prix in 1991 in the Jordan, but he got into an altercation with a taxi driver, and Gaccio, a UK taxi driver, and Gaccio got into a bit of trouble for that and couldn't take part in the race. So Jordan brought in the new upstart that they'd been keeping an eye on, Michael Schumacher, and the rest is history. Olivier Griard, Piercarlo Gonzalez, Johnny Herbert. There you go, Johnny Herbert. This was his first season, so he didn't have anything in his statistics, because this was his first season, and he finished 4th in his very first race, despite having a smashed up foot, at least one smashed up ankle from an F2 race the previous year. And yet in his first race he came 4th in a Benetton, only about 10 seconds off the lead, off the win. Unbelievable. Johnny Herbert, the potentially a great, but the problem with his ankles always held him back. Matteo Gugelmin, Nicola Larini, Stefan Johansson, Nigel Mansell. Nigel Mansell is my guy. 13 wins at this stage. Pierluigi Martini, Stefano Modena, Roberto Moreno, Satoru Nakajima, Alessandro Nannini, he was good, only ever won one race. Japan 89, controversial one. Riccardo Patrese, Jonathan Palmer, father of Julian Palmer. Nelson Piquet, father of Nelson Piquet. Alain Prost, Pierre-Henri Raphael, Louis Sala, I remember all these people. Bernd Schneider, Ayrton Senna, Philip Streff, Aguri Suzuki, Gabriele Tarquini, Derek Warwick. Now he's often a steward now, isn't he? A lot of the time he's a steward, Derek Warwick. Volker Wiedler, Joachim Winkelhock. And then it goes into the teams, basically. AGS, Arrows, Benetton, which is the current Alpine, Brabham, Coloni, Eurobrunn. These teams didn't do much. Ferrari. No, I think that's Dallara, isn't it? He's calling it Italia there, but I'm sure it was known as Dallara. Anyway. Larousse, Ligier, Lotus, a great name in Formula One. So many championships, look, 7 Constructors' Championships, 6 Drivers' Championships, but nothing since 1978. And then they dropped out of Formula One. In the early 90s, I now know what you're going to say, Raikkonen was racing for them, yes, but that was a different Lotus, it wasn't the same Lotus. That was sort of Lotus Group as opposed to Lotus PLC or something. But it wasn't the same team anyway. But they were allowed to use the same name, confusingly. McLaren, March, it became Gugelmin. Minardi, they became they're the current RB, basically. Minardi. Because Red Bull, when they came in, they bought Minardi and turned it into Alpha Tauri. What was it known as before Alpha Tauri? Toro Rosso. Onyx, Sella, Real, Tyrrell. Now Tyrrell are the current, just give me a chance, Mercedes. Long-standing champions that How many championships did they win? Constructors, 1971, and the drivers in 71 and 73 with Jackie Stewart. But they morphed into BAR. BAR then became Honda. Honda then became Braun. Braun then became Mercedes. Williams. That's why everyone wants Williams to do well, because they've always been there. Well, they've always been there since the 70s anyway. Exact speed. And here we have the fastest laps on each of the 16 circuits that we used every year back then. Pretty consistently the same circuits. It's all the same names, a lot of the same names. Senna, Piquet, Prost, Mansell. A bit of Berger, a bit of Rosberg. And we've got abbreviations. This talks about, abbreviations used in the book. Oh, and here we have these pages I looked at so much because it was the only place that I could go to, or it was the most reliable source. I did get, as I say, 2 or 3 other books after this one, but when I first got this one, it was the first book that I had that recorded all the results for every year. It was fantastic. Fastest laps, and then the 6 points finishing positions. The race winner, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, because it was 9 points for a win. 6, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pole position, and all their times as well. It's fantastic. 88 wasn't a particularly interesting season because Senna and McLaren totally dominated, winning all but the Italian Grand Prix because Senna was involved in an accident whilst leading way out in front. 3 laps from the end, lapping, I think it was Schlesser, who was covering for Nigel Mansell because Nigel Mansell had chickenpox. Anyway, Prost had already retired, so that allowed the Ferraris to come through at Monza. And it was the last Italian Grand Prix where Enzo Ferrari was still alive, basically. So it was his last Italian Grand Prix. Or was it the first one after he died? It was either the last one before he died or the first one after he died. I can't remember. Anyway, Ferrari came home 1st and 2nd. Fantastic. But totally inherited from McLaren's retirements. 87, that was an exciting championship. So was 86. Look at the wins. Piquet, Senna, Prost, Mansell, Senna, Mansell, Piquet, Prost, Piquet, Mansell, Berger, Prost. Forget the Berger bit. That was a good win by Berger, but he wasn't one of the championship challengers. It was all about Piquet, Senna, Prost and Mansell. So anyway, I won't go through all of these because that's just a bit silly, but you can see, you get the idea basically. And I used to use this book so much. And then we come, let's see, it goes all the way back to 1950 where there were only 7 races. It doesn't count the, oh it does, sorry. I thought it didn't for a minute. Yeah, the Indianapolis 500, but I tended to ignore the Indianapolis 500 when I was doing statistics. It was included as part of the championship, but all the runners and riders didn't take part in the rest of the championship. I think it only happened twice with maybe Jim Clark and I think, was it Jim Clark and was it Mario Andretti? I don't know, were the only 2 occasions where a Formula 1 driver, Graham Hill as well, took part in the Indy 500. No, it couldn't have been Jim Clark and Graham Hill because even though they took part in the Indy 500, that was in the 60s. The Indy 500 was part of the championship in the 50s. Yeah, so I don't think there was any crossover ever between the Indy 500 drivers and the Formula 1 drivers. And yet, for some reason, it was included as part of the championship. Bonkers. So I tended to ignore the Indy 500 results. Madness that was. And here's the actual rundown of all the points. See all the plus. Now because the total points scored. But if you actually go through it, you'll see that it wouldn't have changed the result of the championship at all, apart from the last one in this book, 1988. Alan Prost, 87 plus 18 is 105 points scored in total. Ayrton Senna, 90 plus 4, 94 points scored in total, but the best 11 results rule made Senna the champion, and it was probably because of this year that in the end, just a few years later, it did actually end in 1991. Perhaps it had to wait for another Concord Agreement or something. I don't know why it took another 2 years before it changed. But this is the only year when the person in second place has actually scored more points than the champion. But in a way, you could argue it was the correct result, because out of the 16 races, McLaren won 15, Senna won 8, Prost won 7. And that's why Senna was the champion, because he had that one extra win. Whereas Senna had a couple of retirements. Prost finished more races. But because it was only the best 11 results that counted, Senna had 8 wins and 3 seconds going towards his 11. Prost had 7 wins and 4 seconds. And that's why he lost the championship by 3 points, which was the difference between first and second back then in a race. See, total domination. Nothing has matched 88, really, for domination. For one driver, I would say yes, 2023, Max Verstappen, for the dominance of one driver. But for the dominance of a team, nothing beats 88. I know Red Bull won, 22 out of 23 in 2023, whereas here it was 15 out of 16. But they were virtually first and second in every race as well. It's total, and if you were there watching the races at the time, it was complete domination. If they both finished the races, they would be first and second by miles, like a lap ahead of everybody else. It was quite an uninteresting championship, unless you were a real fan of either one of those two drivers, because it was very close between them. So that's that. This is the Constructors' Championship as well. And then, it goes through each individual year, going through all the drivers that took part in the year. I didn't use this information as much. Look, I've circled that, because there was obviously a discrepancy. Must have been some kind of discrepancy. I've done a lot of circling, but actually that's too much circling to be discrepancies. I was obviously doing that for some other reason. Don't know why. I used to spend so much time on these statistics, and then it all became pointless. I remember Alonso in 2010, when the new point system changed from 10 points for a win to 25 points for a win. I remember Alonso himself said, "This will annoy anyone who keeps statistics, because the statistic for most number of points in Formula 1 is pointless now, if you'll excuse the pun, because now suddenly drivers have been slaving away getting 10 points for a win, or 9 back then. Now you can get 25 for a win. And that's why all modern drivers shot past all the old legends like Prost. 4-time champion Prost was blown away in the points total, because he was only getting 9 or 10 points for a win. So yeah, Alonso himself said that's destroyed it for people keeping track of statistics, and he was right. I had already stopped keeping statistics at that point though, because I just used to go to the internet to get my information. But yeah, there's every championship here. Circuits. This is the 1987 Jim Clark and Colin Chapman trophies. There was a second, in 1987, there was a normally aspirated championship separate to the Turbo Championship, which was the main championship. And these were the results from that. Maybe it only happened in 87, but it was won by Jonathan Palmer. Oh, this is again more statistics for each individual driver in alphabetical order. Wow. This is amazing, because there was no internet to get this information from, so you can imagine how exciting it was. If you like this sort of thing anyway. But let's flick towards the back, and you will see these are the tables, okay? Most number of races, Graham Hill and Jacques Lafitte and Riccardo Patrese were all joint top, all three of them on 176 races at the time. Jacques Lafitte would have overtaken Graham Hill. Graham Hill was first, Jacques Lafitte, and then Patrese. And Patrese would go on to do more, of course. He hadn't retired. Lafitte was taking part in his 176th race and then had a massive accident. The 1986 British Grand Prix at Brands Hatch. A massive accident. Really damaged his legs badly, and that was the end of his Formula 1 career, just as he equalled Graham Hill. World Championships, Fangio at the top, Brabham, Lauda, Piquet, Stewart, all on 3. Wins, Prost on 35, Jackie Stewart second on 27, then Clark, Lauda, Fangio, Piquet. And most of these are still in the top 10, amazingly. I think the top 10 maybe goes down to Fangio or possibly Piquet, who finished on 23. Or maybe Hakkinen or Hill. But yeah, most of these are still in. For instance, Stewart, Clark, Lauda and Fangio are all still in the top 10. I think. I'm pretty sure. But yeah, Prost was top on 35. He ended up on 51. Mansell was on 13 at the time. He ended up on 31. Pole positions, Jim Clark 33, Senna 29. Jim Clark's 33 was considered almost unbeatable because it was so high. And you've got Lewis Hamilton is now on 103, isn't he, for pole positions. Fastest laps. Clark at the top again on 28, just ahead of Prost. Points, see here, points, look, because you only got 9 points for a win. And you only got points down to 6th place. So back then, 3rd place gave you 4 points. Now 8th place gives you 4 points. 3rd place gives you 15 points. So that's why the points thing is a bit irrelevant now, really. Prost is miles behind Hamilton, for instance, in that table. And that's because of the points system changing. Wins per season, 8 was the top at the time, was Senna. That record was beaten in 1992 by Mansell when he did 9. And then I think Schumacher did 13 in 2004, which was then matched by Vettel in 2013. Before Verstappen beat it 2 years running, I think, didn't he? Was it 22 and 23? He smashed that. I think the current record is 19 by Verstappen. It's incredible. Poles per season, Senna 13 in 1988. 13 out of 16 races, Ayrton Senna was on pole. Another reason why he deserved to be the champion, despite not scoring as many points as Prost. Fastest laps, yeah, so races per world championship. So in other words, how many championships it took you to win one championship. Fangio is at the top there with the wins. Fangio, look, he won every 2.13 races. Incredible. Races per pole position, races per fastest lap. Fangio again here, look. Every 1.82 races. Hassemi. I've never heard of Hassemi. That's strange, seeing as I've had this book all this time, and he's right at the top of races per fastest lap. Maybe I've just forgotten, but he clearly only took part in one race and had the fastest lap. So therefore he has a figure of one fastest lap every one race. So that is it. What's this? Oh, what's this index at the back? Constructors' Championship. Oh, just the history of the individual constructors. Oh, and then the constructors' things about who has the most wins. Ferrari 94. See, look, Lotus. They've not been around. This particular Lotus team, the main Lotus team, the championship winning Lotus team, has not been around since the early 90s, but 79 wins up to and including 1988. It was all Ferrari, Lotus, McLaren and Williams back then. And these are the circuits and how many races they've held and between when. You've still got some long-standing ones. The longest standing one actually is the Hungaroring. Longest standing one at the moment, unbroken run, because Monza, no, maybe is it Monza? No, because Monza missed 2020, didn't it, due to the pandemic. So I think at the moment, right now, Hungaroring is the longest running circuit uninterrupted. Silverstone had its first one in 1948, 2 years before the championship agreed, but it has swapped races with circuits with Brands Hatch and even Donington Park. So Silverstone unfortunately doesn't have an unbroken run since 1987. Yeah, Silverstone since 1987 has held. No, didn't Donington Park do it? Yeah, Donington Park did it 1 year, didn't they? Yeah. I keep going back to Hungaroring basically. Here it only done 3 because it started in 86, 87 and 88, but it has continued unbroken up to the current time, because I don't think it missed any races during the pandemic, did it? I don't think it did. I don't think it, excuse me if I'm wrong, correct me by all means with a comment if I'm wrong. Okay, so there it is, my Grand Prix Data Book, which there were 1 or 2 people did say that they would like to see me do a video on this after I mentioned this book, so here you are, here it is. Okay, thank you for watching, thank you for listening. If you'd like to subscribe, please do so. If you'd like to comment, please do so. If you'd like to like the video, please do so. If you'd like to leave a tip underneath the video on the thanks button, please do so. And thank you to anyone who has. And I'll see you on the very next video. Goodbye for now. Thank you for watching and thank you for listening.